Vitaliy liked cold coffee and warmer truths. He had the kind of face that made people tell him things they'd otherwise bury. A face cataloged by loss, lined by too many nights watching other people's endings. His office smelled faintly of old paper and brandyless regret. The case file slid across his desk like a dare. Oleksiy Kovalenko was not the sort of man who fit easily into the city's quiet corners. He was 32, precise, and built a tidy little empire selling software licenses to bureaucracies that fancied themselves modern. The morning he died, the receptionist called it an accident, a heart attack, at his desk. Oleksiy called it a puzzle with too many corners. Oleksiy had been found in his corner office, slumped over a glass desk. There was blood on the white cuff of his shirt, and a single stab wound under the left collarbone. Small, clean, efficient. No overturned furniture, no sign of forced entry. On the desk, under a mug with lipstick on the rim, lay a folded note. Everyone in the game. No signature, no flourish, just the 3 words, like an accusation tossed into the void. Murder, Vitaliy decided, wasn't always loud. Some were surgical whispers. The building's security cameras had been tampered with, not disabled, just interrupted for 5 minutes the night before. Whoever did it knew where to cut the picture and how to sew the footage back together so the seams looked like nothing. Forensics found a smudged fingerprint on the inside of Oleksiy's office door, not a match in the database. There was a faint trace of a rare cleaning solvent on the floor by the window, and a single cigarette butt in the bin, crushed under a banker's stamp. Lab results would show it belonged to an expensive imported blend, one brand favored by certain late-night executives and certain lonely lovers. Oleksiy's laptop, locked with a password he usually shared with nobody, had a draft email to Oleksiy Bereza, the journalist, saved but unsent. In it, he wrote, "They think they're untouchable. I've got the ledgers. If something happens to me, find the truth in the shadow." Attached a spreadsheet with names, dates, and transfers that didn't add up to any honest accounting. Someone had killed him for what he knew. Serhiy Martynuk, partner, friend by history, ex-authority by reputation. He kept his criminal past like a winter coat, heavy, familiar. He'd come clean, he insisted. He'd left that life. But his fingerprints, older ones, were in places they shouldn't be. He claimed he was at a charity gala the night before. Witnesses confirmed him there. His cuff was spotted, however, with micro-traces of the same solvent found by the window. The convict with a ledger of grudges, recently out, restless and desperate for a life that would forgive him. He had been seen in the same bar as Oleksiy 2 nights ago, nursing promises of reconciliation. His alibi was thin, his temper thinner. But he had an ironclad motive, revenge, or the suspicion of betrayal. The lab found one hair in Oleksiy's hand that didn't belong to the victim. Coarse, dyed black. Dmitro's hair was cropped short and natural. Oleksiy Bereza, the journalist, the unwilling keeper of secrets. She had met Oleksiy twice in recent weeks. She was the one he had trusted to expose the ledger. She said she'd only taken notes and left. She had in her handbag a torn page of a city registry with several names underlined. That night, she drank to forget a source she'd just concluded was dangerous. Sofia Kovalenko, the wife, quiet, sharp. She loved Oleksiy in a way that made people understand love could be complicated by ledgers and late nights. She said she was interstate for a conference. Her plane ticket was real, but her phone had pinged the city network twice after takeoff, near the time of Oleksiy's death. A small cast, each with secrets that fit like mismatched puzzle pieces. The ledger. Oleksiy had uncovered transfers routed through shell companies tied to several city contractors, and, worryingly, a foundation that had quietly funded political campaigns. The ledger was a map of favors and silences. The interruption. The cameras were interrupted for exactly 5 minutes. The same window when the solvent was sprayed, the same window a maintenance log showed a scheduled cleaning that was never filed. Someone with access and paperwork had created plausible deniability. The cigarette. That expensive blend, only a handful of clubs, one private suite at the Riverside Club, and the back room of a certain law firm allowed its patrons to smoke that brand. Membership lists led Vitaliy to a single name, an attorney who handled offshore accounts for the city's well-placed. The hair and the cuff. The hair in Oleksiy's hand was torn, a sign of a struggle. The blood on Serhiy's cuff, a smear, perhaps from first aid. He'd protested, he'd tried to help. DNA would show it wasn't his. The prints on the desk included a partial that matched Leish's. She had been there, she admitted. But the angle suggested 2 people had been present after Oleksiy was already wounded. The phone pings. Sofia's phone ping after takeoff came from a cafe near the airport. Her excuse, she'd left a document at her desk and asked an assistant to scan it. The assistant confirmed a scan. The assistant also confirmed that Sofia groomed Oleksiy's public image when their marriage mattered to investors. Piecing these facts together revealed the outline of a conversation gone wrong. Arrests were made. The contractor's associate took a plea and whispered that he'd only intended to scare Oleksiy. The lawyer was indicted for tampering. The cleaner and the courier testified. Oleksiy published the ledger's first pieces, careful and precise, sparking investigations that would ripple outward. But Vitaliy knew the truth wasn't neat. The system had coughed up one of its small organs. Its disease remained. Sofia's grief turned public. Serhiy disappeared into a quieter life. Dmitro's name was cleared enough to walk the streets, but not to be free of suspicion's shadow. Vitaliy sat alone, the rain like a soft ledger on the window. He had solved the how. The why was a slow-bleeding ledger of fear and appetite, of power that preferred the dark. He had given the city the piece of itself it could not keep hidden forever. When he closed the file, he found the note folded under the last sheet, a scrap he had missed. In small handwriting, Oleksiy's? Someone had written, "Not everyone will read this. Not everyone will care, but some will." Vitaliy smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was true. The case was closed on paper. The game, however, had rewired itself. Whispers continued in the clubs, and new ledgers would always show up in the cracks. Vitaliy poured himself cold coffee, knowing that in a city like this, justice was never a finality. It was an arrangement, fragile, temporary, and always owing someone something. He stood, put on his coat, and walked into the rain. Shadows clung to him like old debts, and he welcomed them. They were, after all, the only honest companions he had. Vitaliy obtained the maintenance logs and spoke to the night cleaner, who confessed she'd been bribed to sign off on a fake report. The cleaner described a man in a navy coat who had handed her an envelope and the number of a lawyer's suite. The lawyer's suite was that of the attorney on the cigarette list, a lawyer who handled trust accounts and made messy disappearances look like neat bookkeeping. When Vitaliy visited the lawyer, he found a ledger of his own, photographs of contracts, stamps of approval, signatures that matched the ones from Oleksiy's spreadsheet. The lawyer broke eventually, not with force, but with the weary arithmetic of someone who knew he'd been found out. He admitted he served as the conduit. He had been paid to obscure the trail. He had not killed Oleksiy, he said, but he admitted arranging the meetings necessary to silence men who looked like Oleksiy. The lawyer's trembling produced one last confession. He had been instructed to bring a message, something to scare Oleksiy off, to the office that night. He had hired a cleaner to cut the footage, a courier to deliver the envelope. The cleaner had been tipped with cash. The courier? A name circling in drunken whispers at the Riverside Club. Vitaliy slept badly that night because the map was almost whole. The missing piece was motive. Who gained most from Oleksiy's silence? The ledger implicated a city contractor who had just won a multi-million-dollar tender. A tender that, if found illegal, would bring down not only accounts but reputations and betrayals. That contractor had close ties to political operatives and a foundation that appeared immune to scrutiny. Vitaliy arranged a meeting with all of them. He set the room like a stage. Serhiy arrived last, looking like a man who had accidentally found himself at a wake for his own conscience. Lesya came with a recorder she said she had been forced to keep silent. Sofia arrived wearing solemn black like a practiced widow. Vitaliy spoke slowly. He described the ledger and the arrangement. The courier had been an ex-employee of the contractor, desperate and paid to deliver a threat rather than a weapon. The intended message had been to scare Oleksiy into silence, nothing more. But the contractor's associate had panicked when Oleksiy refused to be intimidated. A scuffle followed. The small, clean wound was meant to be non-lethal, a warning. Instead, a vein was nicked. Oleksiy bled quietly, punctured by a mistake. Panic made the rest. It was the contractor's associate, Vitaliy revealed, who had called the lawyer to arrange the cleanup. The lawyer had used his contacts to erase 5 minutes of footage. The cleaner had been paid. The courier had been given a cigarette and a tip. Serhiy had been called to calm things down because he knew how to handle tense men. Lesya had been used as the scared confidant, and Sofia had been lied to about the nature of the ledger's danger. They argued, lies stacked like broken chairs. Dmytro, who had nothing to gain but everything to lose, burst into the room with a fistful of receipts he'd found in a trash bin, receipts proving payoffs. He'd been pushed into the periphery and left to rot. When the contractor's associate finally admitted to being there that night, tears on his face, Vitaliy listened like a judge hearing a confession. He recorded the words, and the city felt for a moment like a machine with a sand grain stuck in its gears. Vitaliy cornered Serhiy first, in a low-lit parking garage where the city's noise felt conciliatory. Serhiy's palms were calloused. His eyes were all apologetic rehearsals. "We argued," he admitted, after a while. "He wanted me out. He said the ledger would be his last clean thing. I told him it wasn't worth it. He swore he left before midnight. He had no blood on him that the lab could tie to Oleksiy. Then, Lesia. She came in with cigarette smoke on her collar and eyes that measured the room like deadlines. "He gave me something that terrified me," she said. "Names, transfers. He wanted me to publish. I refused. Not because I didn't want to, because publishing that would get people killed." She had been at his office that night, she admitted. He wanted her to meet him the following morning. She left, she claimed, when he started naming people who touched the edges of power. "I left him alive," she said. "I promised to help. Then they called me. People who happened to know too much, and told me to stay away." Dmytro was a punch in the gut of the city's compassion. He admitted being at the bar but denied killing Oleksiy. He had an alibi, a bartender who would later admit he lied to protect the clientele. Dmytro's past made him an attractive suspect, but his hands were clean in a way that made Vitaliy suspicious of how eager everyone was to point at him. Sophia? She cried at Vitaliy's office, a small, perfect ruin of grief and calculation. "He was going to ruin everything," she whispered. "Not just us. He had ledgers that would take down livelihoods. I begged him to stop." She said she had loved him. She said she had feared for him. She said she had no idea who might have killed him. Vitaliy believed her. He also believed she did not tell the whole truth.